Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha, Giribharadhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Giribharadhari, Yasoda Nandana, Brajajana Ranjana, Yasoda Nandana, Brajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tiara, Bonachari, Yamuna Tiara, Bonachari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari, Jaya Madhava, Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha, Giribharadhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Giribharadhari, Yasoda Nandana, Brajajana Ranjana, Yasoda Nandana, Brajajana Ranjana, Jamuna Tiara, Banachari, Jamuna Tiara, Banachari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha, Giribharadhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Giribharadhari, Yasoda Nandana, Brajajana Ranjana, Yasoda Nandana, Brajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tiara, Banachari, Yamuna Tiara, Banachari. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhajakacharya, austere Sita Sri Sriman, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnavindi Ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki, Sri Sri Radha Radhadath Ki, Temple of the Vedic Planetarium Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Okay, so we are reading Volume 3, Chapter 1, New Vrindavan in West Virginia. June 29th, 1976. Despite his complaint of heart strain yesterday, Srila Prabhupada did go out for a walk today. He didn't speak much and he kept it short. At the end of his walk, he visited Radhakund. Then, after greeting the deities and receiving Guru Puja, he went to a large hall in the new building. Although there were no doors and windows fitted, just gaping holes, the marble floor is laid, and the devotees had hung flags and festoons with thick wooden roof beams, ready for a grand initiation ceremony. Srila Prabhupada's asana was set at one side with a fire pit in front. From there he gave a very brief class on Srimad Bhagavatam 7.6.16. Prahlad Maharaj criticized those whose only goal in life is to accumulate money. Because when you accumulate money and you die, you can only take 35% with you. You have to leave 65% behind. So, in support of this, Srila Prabhupada reiterated one of the sections of Bhagavad Gita we read during the evening darshan. Then he told us that our philosophy is communism, but a different type than the politically based one. If we become too much attached to getting money, that is the material world. There is no satiation. Idam praptaha. That Bhagavad Gita word, I have got so much money, now my bank account is so much, and I shall get further money, and my bank balance will be like this. This is a demonic mentality. We shall require money, whatever is absolutely necessary. That much money I must get. That is an order. We cannot take more than what is necessary. This is actually spiritual communism. If everyone thinks that everything belongs to God and I am his son, so I have got right to enjoy the property of my father. But as much as I require, not more than that, this is spiritual communism, Bhagavata communism. We see the world would be different if we find that over time, people's income increases and so do the expenses, but not at the same rate. It's like they say, you can take a baby calf and lift it over your head, and every day the calf's weight is growing, and every day your strength is growing, so eventually you're lifting a 1-ton cow, yes? Can you do that? Well, why not? Your strength is growing and the cow's weight is growing, so why can't you lift the cow? Who knows? Madhurya knows. Because they're both growing, but at a different rate. The cow's rate is growing more quickly than your strength can grow. So the expenses seem to grow more quickly than people's income. And we see people are thinking about how much more they need to accumulate. How many billions do some of these people have? The one guy, I think he's in France, he has like 180 billion. And the people like Elon Musk have like 150 billion maybe, and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and we're talking dollars. So when we say 50 billion, we mean a trillion rand. And the guy in France would have 3 trillion rand. Is that enough? Too much is never enough, right? But imagine if they had spiritual import in mind. Because people go by their income. Say they only make 2% on their money, which they'd make more. But if they have a trillion rand, 2% of a trillion rand would be, how many? No, if it's a trillion, 2% would be, it would be 20 billion, wouldn't it? Yes, 20 billion. So $1 billion. They had 50. But things are growing. If they make 5%, now they have 50 billion rand in income. Is that enough? It isn't? But if people were thinking to help others and to give to Krishna conscious projects, instead of just thinking accumulating, it's like when I said that when you die, you take 35% with you. When you die, do you take 35% with you, 100%, 22.5%, or nothing? Which one is it? You get a choice when you're going to die. You say, how much can you take with you, right? Is that it? No. How much do you take with you? Like Benjamin de Urban, he started Durban, and when he died, he took it with him, and it's not here anymore. Is that true? No? So we'll go on. So a Grahastha, of course, required to accumulate money because he's living with family. But so far as brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyas is concerned, they should not keep any money. Lord Chaitanya was so strict that his personal servant, one day, he was taking after eating a little haritaki. So one day he was giving, and Lord Chaitanya inquired, where you got this? So he said, I kept it from yesterday. Oh, so you are stocking? He immediately criticized, this is not good. Srila Prabhupada is not a theoretician, espousing impractical ideas. He lives according to what he speaks. Of course, even if we do not stock, don't think that we'll starve. Krishna has provided, but we should be depending on Krishna. There is no anxiety. We've experienced this. I was alone for many years, but not a single day I was starving. No, there was food. Right after his discourse, he awarded initiation to the waiting candidates grouped around the fire arena. Devotees from many temples were in attendance: St. Louis, Buffalo, Cleveland, Baltimore, and there are 7 Radha Damodar buses and vans. As the initiates began to come forward one by one to receive their japa beads, Prabhupada stopped the proceedings and wanted to know why they did not have new neck beads on. He said that they should have been put on at the beginning. Then he paused a second time and chided a boy for wearing only 1 strand, saying that there should ideally be 3 and at least 2. He reproached the temple presidents for not knowing this. Cleveland Rath Yatra was held in the middle of the week and was a big success. The parade route took their lordships and their entourage through the main business districts, and many people crowded the windows of the buildings to see them. Vaisheshika had gone to take photos and do an article on it for BTG. And the day after Prabhupada called, it says Vishaka. Prabhupada called her in for a detailed report. Pradumya's wife, Arundhati, and son, Aniruddha, arrived a day or 2 ago. They were en route to India from Los Angeles, but will join Srila Prabhupada's party. Pushta Krishna Maharaj has been complaining of too great a workload, what with his secretarial duties and tape transcribing. Because Arundhati is an expert typist and experienced in transcribing Prabhupada's tapes, Srila Prabhupada has agreed that she should travel with us and assist her husband. Pushta Krishna Swami appears to be having some personal problems. He half jokes about being in Maya and makes oblique remarks as to how difficult it is to control the senses and his mind. His sadhana has become very irregular, and he is oversleeping and still not chanting all of his rounds. He had excused himself to Balaram in Melbourne that he was overworked, and now it appears that there is more to it. He has approached Pradumya for advice, and today Pradumya Prabhu discussed his situation with me. This is Harisori talking. We both agreed that something practical must be done, so we decided the best thing was, rather than disturb Prabhupada, was to get Tamal Krishna Goswami to talk with him when we arrive in New York. Giriraj Prabhu wrote from Bombay. He informed Srila Prabhupada that the Gita Pratishthan meeting has been postponed until later the year to enable Srila Prabhupada and others to attend. He reported some progress with the construction efforts. In fundraising, several important men have pledged large donations for the construction of the Gurukul and the library. As far as the building work itself goes, the twin towers are scheduled to be finished by December, but Srila Prabhupada's rooms on the top floor could be ready to use in August. However, he said the elevators would not be ready until February next year because they have to be custom made and installed. On other matters, Gopal Krishna is going to pursue having our case raised before the Parliament in Delhi. We also enclosed a lengthy questionnaire sent by Bhavan's Journal, the most prestigious and popular of India's religious magazines. They posted 21 questions, which they are presenting to every major guru and holy man, soliciting their opinions on the decline of religion, the current state of Hinduism, how it can be revived, etc. He said that Bhavan is eager to receive Srila Prabhupada's response, and they will print it as the last in a series of interviews. Prabhupada is keen for the visa problem to be dealt with, and he outlined once again to Giriraj some of the arguments to use. Concerning our proposal to be presented to the Parliament, anyone coming from ISKCON should be given permanent residence. India's original culture and religion is being spread all over the world, and out of their religious beings, if they come to stay in Vrindavan, especially why the government should harass them. Our Goswamis have said, Namagani Sadaruchi Pritishte Padastali. A devotee is very much anxious to chant Hare Krishna and live in a place where Krishna has his pastimes, generally Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, like that. All of our men who are coming to India for this purpose, they are properly initiated and following the regulative principles. In this connection, the certificates of the Indian authorities gotten by Yasodanandan Swami can be used, wherein they certify that our ISKCON men are proper Vaishnavas decorated with tilak in 12 places. As for fundraising, he stated his pleasure that Mr. Brij Ratan Mohata is willing to help apart from his own wealth. Prabhupada said he could help us in other ways also. Personally, he may give what he wants, but let him help collect funds. He is such a big man in Bombay. What I know is that if he likes, he can help us, and he is favorably inclined to our movement. Rupees 25,000 he can collect from at least 100 men in India. So he can collect and help raise 25 lakhs very easily. Although we require about 10 lakhs. To pay 25,000 rupees, there are thousands and thousands of men in Bombay. We can easily do it. Bombay is the richest city in India. For the questionnaire, Prabhupada told Giriraj he was in the process of answering the questions, and he would send it as soon as it was completed. Prabhupada decided to present his answers to the Bhavan's journal in the evening darshans. He is giving it serious attention, and today Pushta Krishna, taking the role of the interview, put first 7 questions to him. In front of an audience of devotees, Prabhupada's answers were a lengthy and critical analysis, not just of the population in general, which is the subject of most of the questions, but the questionnaire itself speaks in terms of Hinduism, a concept of origin, which is foreign to the Vedas. The religion, he said, is Sanatana Dharma, which is for everyone, not just so-called Hindus. June 30th, 1976. Srila Prabhupada was not well again today, and he had an ashen pallor, and he came out of his room. He took only a very short walk, and for class simply had Pradumya read the verse and purport and then speak on it. This verse was a good descriptive of the typical materialist. Oh, my friends, sons of demons, in this material world, even those who are apparently advanced in education have the propensity to consider, this is mine and that is for others. Thus, they are always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families in a limited conception of a family life, just like uneducated dogs and cats. They are unable to take to spiritual knowledge. Instead, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance. After hearing Pradumya give his explanation, Srila Prabhupada added just a few comments. He said he had personal experience of how foolish people became when they claim ownership of their surroundings. We have seen practically in India. During the partition days, when the Britishers left India, they gave a parting kick by dividing Pakistan and India. So I have seen in my own eyes there was fighting between Hindus and Muslims. For at least 1 week in Calcutta, heaps of dead bodies were there. So the fighting was between Hindu and Muslim. But when they died, the body was up and it was taken to be burned or thrown away. So the land remained there, and these people fighting between themselves, this is mine, this is mine. They finished their life. The land remained there. It was this illusion, aham mameti, it is mine, it is yours. He spoke for 5 minutes and then returned to the house. When Srila Prabhupada is unable to discourse on Krishna conscious philosophy, is it a serious matter indeed. There have been confusing reports about the ownership of the temple in Fiji. Upendra has written expressing his concern, and he enclosed a draft copy of the trust deed and constitution. Money is being collected in ISKCON's name, but it is unclear whether the deed of the land is actually in ISKCON's name or privately held by Mr. Dauji Punjab, Vasudev Das. Dealings between the GBC and Vasudev Prabhu are said to be strained, and there is a talk of a separate board of trustees being set up. Prabhupada does not like this. He calls pish, 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 whispering rumors and idle talk with nothing clearly stated. He therefore wrote directly to Vasudeva, stating how things managed in ISKCON society, and requested him to clarify what his intentions are. Here's a letter. My dear Vasudev Das, please accept my blessings. In connection with our ISKCON project in Fiji, I beg to inform you that we are managing our Krishna conscious movement by the Governing Body Commission, GBC. We have got about 20 GBCs looking after the whole world affairs, and above the GBC, I am there. Below the GBC, there are temple president, secretary, treasurer in every temple. So the temple president is responsible to the GBC, and the GBC is responsible to me. In this way, we are managing. But why you are proposing a separate trustee for Fiji? We have up to now no separate trustee. If this is for security purpose, that we can discuss. If you have got some ideas, please explain to me how you want to manage. But I think Fiji Temple cannot be managed in a separate way. But still, I will entertain some idea. If you have difference, you can write to me explaining. He told Vasudeva that the deed to the property should be in favor of himself, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and could not be dedicated to any office bearer, suggesting that Vasudeva could be the president and Upendra the secretary. He firmly stated that there is no need for trustees. In any circumstance, he said, there cannot be a private property in the name of ISKCON. If you want to keep it a private property, then ISKCON name should not be utilized. I am very much anxious to get your clear reply to this thing. So many things are unclear, so let it be cleared up. He requested the copy of the deed be sent to him in New York. To Upendra, Prabhupada wrote, unless the temple is fully under our control, we are not interested. Then we shall call it back. I will decide on receipt of the reply to this letter to Vasudeva Das. So far, the Fiji construction is concerned, where it says supplying needs to the sick, poor, and orphans. That is not our program. We distribute prasadam to everyone, not particularly to the needy, for we make no discrimination, rich or poor. After resting most of the morning, Srila Prabhupada took his massage and seemed to recover somewhat. Thus, in the afternoon, he gave an interview to Mike Derby, a young reporter and good friend of ISKCON from the Wheeling Intelligencer. Mike had written to Srila Prabhupada in mid-February, when he was still at high school, for this interview. A thick-set young man wearing a sleeveless vest and long sideburns. He was very respectable, genuine, and had obviously been reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Their short discussion touched on Christianity and material science, both of whom Srila Prabhupada said were cheating. The so-called Christians by changing the instructions of Christ in the Bible, and the scientists for making false claims about chemicals producing life. Soft-spoken Mike agreed with him. Mike asked Srila Prabhupada if he would tell him something about his spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada didn't reveal much, except to say in a straightforward way, this is a spiritual master, one who is a representative of God, one who speaks what God has said, then he's spiritual master. Mike was hoping for something more specific, but I've never heard anything of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and I wondered if you would tell me a little bit about him, if you would. Srila Prabhupada was reserved. What shall I say? He was my spiritual master, and whatever he taught, we are speaking, that's all. We don't talk any nonsense. When Mike said that he had waited a long time to have this opportunity to meet Srila Prabhupada, and was very touched and humbly thanked him. At the end of the interview, Mike respectfully asked to have his photograph taken with his divine grace, and Srila Prabhupada happily obliged. He had Mike come and sit next to his asana, while Vishaka clicked away with her camera. Prabhupada liked him and encouraged him to visit New Vrindavan. Prabhupada decided not to go and allowed Mike to stay on while Pushta Krishna continued with the Bhavan's journal interview. They covered 2 more questions. One asked, why so many savants focus on jnana when the scriptures declare bhakti as the simplest and most direct way to attain self-realization? The other was whether a guru was necessary for spiritual life and how one can recognize a guru. Prabhupada spoke extensively on both points before bringing to the meeting at a close at 8 o'clock. So we see a few things here. How Prabhupada was very clear what he was doing. And you can do 2 things at the same time. He was giving a lecture to the devotees. He thought, why not talk about the points that this Bhavan is doing? And what's amazing is that Pushta Krishna would ask him the questions, and he could extemporaneously, meaning that without going through notes and reviewing it for a long time, he could give answers on these. And in the meantime, the devotees got to hear this. I got to see this in Mumbai when Prabhupada came from Nairobi, and Shyamachandra had lost his yellow fever shot card. And yellow fever was big in Kenya then, it's not now. And to go to India, you needed that proof of the vaccination. And so they put him in the quarantine hospital. So what I did is I went out and I would stay in the parking lot of this hospital. And Prabhupada would have his Mangal Artik with a couple of his devotees. I would go inside. And then there was a room maybe almost this big in length. And there was like 5 ping pong tables in a row. And Prabhupada would walk around these tables chanting his japa. So I would walk around the tables too. And when I'd get to the middle, I'd look at Prabhupada and he would look at me. And then when I get to the other side again, I'd look at Prabhupada and he'd look at me. And so I did like an hour of this every day for about a week. So during that time, Shyamachandra was interviewing Prabhupada about the book, I think it was called Dialectic Spiritualism. And Shyamachandra would say what different philosophers spoke on. And at this point, he was speaking on Aristotle and Socrates and the advanced philosophy they gave. And Srila Prabhupada understood what Aristotle and Socrates were saying, even though it's all Greek to most people. Prabhupada immediately explained what things they had correctly and what things were missing. So Prabhupada has the knowledge to be able to analyze these things quickly. And he went on to other philosophers and did the same thing, analyzing which things they had correctly and which they didn't. So he did the same thing with the questions on this Bhavan journal. And what a great question. It shows our influence that they say, why do so many of them work on Gyan, which is something the impersonalists do? And just like Prabhupada asked about these people, he said to Shyamachandra, what is their philosophy? When people would come to him first, he would ask, what is your philosophy? Because so much is, how do you worship? What do you think God is? What do you think your relationship with him is? You need to know what someone's philosophy is. So maybe it's not the first question you ask them where they live and bring them to the temple. And quite often on the first visit to a temple, like Prabhupada said in the beginning, you don't introduce regulative principles. If some young person comes here with his girlfriend and they're all happy holding hands, you don't lecture on to them about illicit sex. The first goal you should have is make them feel comfortable about coming. Because if they don't feel comfortable about coming, then you can't do anything more. So Prabhupada says in the beginning, we go in like a needle and come out like a plow. You just try to get people to come back. So this, when we talk with people, we have to be accustomed to this. It's quite often if we see, say at the feast, let's say one man comes with 3 of his friends and his wife and 3 children, and he brings his brother with her wife and 4 children. So now how many of them are there? There's 8, there's 11, plus the 3, there's 14 of them. If somehow you neglect them, they already have a whole group. But if a person comes by himself, this is a person that you want to go and talk to. Because after all, it's like if you're in the sales office and you're all talking to each other. Say it's a real estate sales office. You're not going to sell any property to each other. You talk to the person who comes in. So the person who comes by themselves, if they're neglected, they really feel alone. But the fact they came by themselves means that they really wanted to find out what's going on. It's like I know some people from my hometown, they say, well, will you take me to that temple or meet me there? They want to go, but someone has to meet them. If someone really wants to find out, they don't wait for someone to invite them, or they don't wait for their friends to want to go. They just go. So that person feels the most neglected if you neglect him. And he's the best candidate because if you're talking to him, it's just him and you. So we have to look out for these people. Just like Prabhupada is spending the time to talk with the reporters and with the others. We have to look for these people because we're a preaching movement. And we have to look for the people who've come for the first time. It's funny how some places deal with new people. It's like Chaupati has a big group of people. What they do is if they ask, people can't get a hold of their spiritual master every day, correct? Especially if it's Jayapataka Swami, it is a GBC with about 80,000 disciples. If he gives 1 second to each disciple, he only has about, he only has about 2% of the day left. If he gives 1 second to each one. So what they do in Chaupati is someone says they're new, they go over and greet them. They find out where they're from. Say they're from Unit 6, or they're from Reservoir Hills, or they're from somewhere in the south, or they're from New Lands, or they're from Old Lands, or whatever else is out there. Then somebody from that area goes and meets them and says, I will be a counselor and help you out to get started in this. Now the difference with that and a counselor is that they assign that person right away. And of course that person can change counselors. Once you take a guru, which now we suggest you study Prabhupada's books for 6 months, then find someone who can guide you, then you don't change them. But to find someone who can introduce you, this is a very valuable thing. So we can announce, if anybody is new, please raise your hand, and then people go either informally or formally, someone can go and meet with them. And this helps them to get started. And we see Prabhupada was very secure on things. We see here like he wanted to know what people's intentions were. And he was very clear on what our ISKCON system of management was. And Prabhupada knew things, but he had my mother write the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust because she was a trust attorney. And Prabhupada understood exactly what she was trying to do. And he was very clear on what he wanted. So Prabhupada was clear on that. Properties need to be in ISKCON's name. But at the same time, he says, if you have some ideas, we can discuss those. So this is something we have to do with people. We have to be very solid in what we expect. But at the same time, we're open to discussing with people what ideas they have. And quite often, we need to see where people are coming from, right, wrong, or indifferent. We need to find out what their philosophy is and what kind of things they've done in life so that we can help them or place them in the right place. So we want to know what people's ideas are so we see where they stand and help bring them in the right direction. Because you can't put all the effort towards an ISKCON property when it really belongs to someone else. And some of them have gotten in trouble in this way. So we see how Prabhupada was very secure on what he was trying to do. And it's interesting how he says here that by changing the instructions of Christ in the Bible, isn't the Bible given just the way Jesus spoke it? Rick Perry, who was the governor of Texas, said that if English was good enough for Jesus, it should be good enough for the Mexicans. Now, what's wrong with that premise? Is something wrong with that? What's wrong with it? Who can tell me? But the Bible comes in English and it has Jesus' words in there. Oh, it's a translation. And in the translation, they may change certain things. That's why, Bible is supposed to be like a vegetarian scripture. And this is why I said, oh, the Greek people will understand the Bible better than the others. They said, why is that? I said, because they can read the original words and talk about changing it. Prabhupada knows there's so many things what they did in the Council of First Nicaea and 300 and something. They changed a bunch of things in the Bible. They took reincarnation out and they put on the table. And they said, if God doesn't like the changes, he'll push the book off the table. And so it wasn't pushed off. And the Council of Trent, they made a bunch of other changes. So from Greek, it's translated. And they banned a whole bunch of books from the Bible. There's a whole thing on the History Channel about books that were banned from the Bible. It's like they totally didn't like the Nicene. Was it the Nicene? Not the Nicaea. What is the one that is very much leaning on? Is it the Gnostic version? But they called them heretics, even though they were quoting things from the Bible. So it says in the Bible that Jesus gave the people meat. But it's like I asked the one Greek person, I said, the original translation, the original words were Jesus gave the people bromide. And they translate it as meat. He says, bromide doesn't mean meat. Bromide means food. So if I said to you, tell Madhurya Kandamani to bring me some food. He said, what did he say? You said, Kshudi asked you to bring him some meat. Is that a proper translation? But meat is a kind of food, isn't it? But when I'm saying, it says in the Bible that the seeds will be your meat. I mean, they've totally disregarded certain things. And then in Spain, when the Jews, when they were converted to Christianity, they would still practice the Jewish rites, like the Passover, and they would punish them for this. But did Christ follow all the Jewish rites? What religion was Christ? You know, Toshan, what religion was Christ? No one knows? Was he Christian, Buddhist, Jewish, or Hindu? Who says Christian? Who says Jewish? He was Jewish. He practiced all those rites. So it'd be like if we make you a devotee, but then we punish you for chanting japa and for following Ekadasi. It's funny, in the Christian churches, do they practice any of the Jewish rites? Then how are they following Christ? If Christ lived these things and he did them, how do they just throw the whole thing out? Not part of it, the whole thing. They don't do any of it. And nobody even questions. If Jesus followed these and we're following Jesus, why don't we do them? Do you ever hear that? Do they even offer an explanation why they don't do them? But if you're going to be a Christian, don't you follow Christ? That's why they have it's funny, it's called Jews for Jesus. And they're not necessarily Jewish people, but they follow the Jewish rites. Because Christ followed them. But most of them don't, right? You've seen some Christian churches here, right, Toshan? Do they follow any of the Jewish rites? Even though Christ did. So how do we accept Christ, but not accept the things he did? Is it not mind-boggling that no one even discusses this? Just the whole thing isn't done, and Jews are criticized for... So Prabhupada is saying here how they don't follow. And that's why different things come along. You know, that's where the Muslims said that, well, they don't follow the Christianity. But what we have to do is not try to criticize the people too much, but explain how we follow in disciplic succession. We do the practices our Guru did, all the way back to Lord Chaitanya and others. We do the same practices. We don't invent something that they didn't do and then say we're following them. So when you translate something, this is why in the Gita, first it's given with the Sanskrit letters, then the Sanskrit verse is given with Roman letters. Someone said, aren't those English letters? No, there are no English letters. The English people were given the Roman alphabet when the Romans controlled it for 700 years. So they're Roman letters, and then it's given word for word in English, and then the full translation is good. Just like when Krishna says in the 29th verse of the 9th chapter that you should give me a leaf, a fruit, a flower, and meat, right? Does he say meat? Now, if I translated it without the Sanskrit, I could translate that way. But when you look at the Sanskrit, patram pushpam phalam toyam, which one of those is meat? Can't be patram, that's a leaf. Pushpam is a flower. Toyam? No. It's the leaf and the fruit, the flower and the water. There is no meat in there. But if you translated it without the, does the Bible come with the original Greek words and each word is translated? Or was it spoken by Jesus in English? Which one of those? Neither one is true, is it? Now, if someone's a real Christian scholar, what language do they read the Bible in? Who knows? What do they read the Old and New Testament in? What language? I'll give you some choices. English, Zulu, Russian, Greek. Which one would it be? No, Greek. Because the original writings are in Greek. They learn Greek and read it in Greek. Because it was written in Greek. Just like if people learn the Sanskrit to learn the original words of Krishna, the real scholars, they learn Greek and they read it in Greek. Because there's so many mistakes. You see, the Catholics translated it from Greek to Latin. And then the Protestants, they didn't even go back to the original Greek. They translated it from the Latin into the English. So now you have a Greek translation to Latin, Latin to English, and then they misunderstood or changed certain things. And certain things are wrong in there. Like in the Protestants, they don't accept some of the books in the Bible that the Catholics do because they said they weren't found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But later on, those books were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But did the Protestants include them in their Bible? No, they didn't. So we see that what they teach is not going to be on the lines of what Jesus really taught. They change things to accent it's only Christianity. They love to say there's no other religion, but see, it's easy if we don't have competition. If everybody else is wrong, you have to come here. But God likes some competition, because if there's other religious choices, then you have to treat people right. You have to have a good program, and you have to be able to help people. If there's only one, you have to take that, right? Just like with electricity. You may like or dislike ESCOM, right? But if you like electricity, you have to take them. You don't say, I'll use someone else. So, God likes to have this kind of competition so that we can present the best things. And even though we don't want to criticize others, we have to see the fallacies that they've made and where they don't make certain accommodations. They decided somehow the Pope was infallible. Because you vote him in, he's automatically infallible, right? Just like when the people vote a leader in, they're automatically infallible. So, if that's true, then why did Pope Gregory, who was Alexander Borgia, Pope is supposed to be a celibate student, he had illegitimate children, and he and his son wanted to kill the husband of his daughter and have sex with her. Now, if this doesn't sound like a very good example of the celibate leader. If someone gets married, they still may not be celibate like a sannyasi, but it's better they're married, or at least in a committed relationship. But when they're supposed to be a celibate and they want to kill the husband of their own daughter to have sex with him, this doesn't set a very good religious example, does it? So in the year 1500, they had a big celebration to commemorate the 1500th anniversary of Christ's birth. And people did all kinds of debauched things. Because if the leader can't follow, how can the followers follow? Right? Is it not true? If the leader can't follow it themselves, how can they follow? That's why the Acharya is someone who's a teacher by example. We see that in Prabhupada, and we see that in gurus. They practice what they preach, as it's said. And that's why we should be thankful for this. And we should see where other people are going astray. This is why we keep the scriptures alive, because one little change can change everything. Are there any questions or comments? Yes. So you're going to give the microphone because there's 3,000 people listening in cyberspace. They may all not be listening now, but it gets recorded. And if it doesn't go over the microphone, then they wonder, what was the question? We could give answers and then people have to guess what the question is.
I need some clarity from you, Prabhu, that where was Christ buried? Where was he buried? Which country he was buried?
It's echoing too much. I can't quite understand. What about Christ?
Where was he buried?
Where was he?
Which country was he buried? Buried.
Oh, well, I don't know. Some people say India, some people say Israel. I don't know that that's a good point to start with, because you know, the Catholic Church was very upset. No, he never went to India, because they have a whole bunch of books they won't let anybody see. But they don't want people to think he went to India. So if you can even find the information, then it's a difficult point to try to argue. It's just like if we're going to talk to people, we go after the point that's the easiest. Like Christ said, thou shalt not kill. Then why are they killing animals and killing each other? Just like with the criminal Al Capone. He did many crimes, didn't he? Well, actually, he didn't do crimes. He said, I don't do that. People work for me do that, which is a bigger crime. But what crime did they convict him of? Income tax evasion. He said he was making $250,000 a year. They proved he was making $125 million. That's too big a jump, isn't it? 500 times? Be one thing if he said he was making 10 million and he really made 12. Maybe you can hide that, but you can't hide 99.9% of it, 99.8% of it. That's a lot to try to hide. So they convict him of that because that was the easiest thing to convict. So, it's difficult for us to say where Christ was really buried and to go for that. Some people will say India. But if you go off on a point like that, it's hard for people to accept, and then anything you say after that, they may reject. So what we try to do is, and then we don't want to argue from someone else's scripture, because then they'll go quoting their own scripture and say, well, the Bible says this. I said, well, yes, but we follow our own book. If we followed the Bible, we'd already be a Christian. And so we follow our own book, which gives us our own instructions. So we don't present things that are hard to prove, even if they're true. It's not helpful to find out where he's buried, and we can't really prove that point. So it's not a good point to bring up. It's better to bring up the points that Christ practiced the Jewish rituals and the followers don't do it. That we can verify. So it's better to stick to the things we can verify. Does that make sense?
I think Srila Prabhupada was saying, to become a good Christian, to become a good Muslim, good Hindu, and so on, that you must follow Krishna consciousness.
Yes, because what he's teaching is the same idea about bhakti and following certain things. And Christ said there are many things left to tell, but you cannot bear them. And if someone practiced it really well, there was a woman, Saint Teresa of Avila, and she was very devoted and she prayed all the time, and she had a vision of Krishna and the gopis in the spiritual world. And she says, this is God and his associates in the spiritual world. And she described the blue boy, and she described Goloka Vrindavan. So if someone is a real Christian, they may get Krishna's darshan. This was someone who was verified as a saint, Saint Teresa of Avila. You put it in the Google, Saint Teresa of Avila, and vision of Krishna, and it comes right up. Another question? No? So we stop there? Anything missing? Hare Krishna. Thank you.